Losing a parent is one of the most difficult things a child can go through of any age. A 50-year-old losing a parent still feels like that child once again. I'm talking to an amazing woman and I'm so excited. She's the author of an incredible book, Letters to My Father, 7 Steps to Healing from the Loss of a Parent. Vernae Taylor, thank you so much for joining me on scottcundill.com.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Vernae, you are such a shining light at the moment at a time when people need shining lights. And, as a parent myself, one of the difficult things to do is actually even broach the subject of death with your children. It's like they don't want to have that conversation. What made you decide to start that conversation?
My goodness, you're right. You're right. No one wants to have that conversation. We know it's inevitable. And even if it is like a sickness or you're preparing for a loss or passing, you just never know what to do. You never know what you're going to feel at any given moment. So for me, I took on this mission simply because I had to. I had no choice, right? In 2011, I lost my father, and it was to cancer, unfortunately. And he kind of knew already that he was sick. So he kind of told us at the tail end of everything. So it seemed somewhat accelerated that, like, oh my goodness, now we're building on a relationship. We're having really meaningful conversations that I've always wanted to have, probably as a teenager. And here you are, you're stripped from me so quickly. So the way that I had to cope, I've always been a writer. I've always been someone that loved to journal. I've always been expressive. I used to write a lot of poetry. And I just wanted to go to a quiet place each time that it was his anniversary, Father's Day, his birthday, anytime that I wanted to honor him and just feel his presence surrounding me. I would go to a quiet place and write in this spiral notebook. I still have it somewhere. I've got to find it. This old spiral notebook. And I would write things that I would have said to him. I drew pictures, I wrote letters, I wrote poems, and just found a way to reflect and kind of check into what it is that I was feeling. And it wasn't until as of recently in July when I had the opportunity to say, you know what, I know I want to be a published author. And I know that I'm going to publish something. And I actually was set to publish my book of poetry. But God knew exactly what the timing was and what was going to be needed in the world. And unfortunately, we were right dead set in the middle of a pandemic where people were experiencing losses that they've never experienced before, and birthed Letters to My Father.
It's a beautiful cover. And, just looking at your cover, listening to the way that you speak, everything about you does radiate that shining light that the world needs at the moment. And it's such a blessed space to be in, because you're giving off that light and you're helping other people with what they're going through, especially during this time. And I realize that, divine right timing has stepped in as well, and it's all happening. But I also understand the difficulty that it must be for you to publish a book at any time. Never mind being what you would call an authorpreneur, I think your word is, which is interesting.
Yes.
And you had to learn how to almost shape yourself in your own life as well to be able to publish that book. Tell us about the lessons you've learned from just getting the book out there.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for saying that word correctly. Authorpreneur. Shout out to one of my coaches, Taria Avant, who actually trademarked that word. I love it. Author and entrepreneur together, as if entrepreneur is not hard enough to say, right? But it was the weekend of my birthday, actually, July 25th, my 38th birthday. And I actually was sponsored to be a part of a book camp. And so it was like an accelerated weekend where you would have like a group of accountability partners to get through this process. So thankfully the content was already there. It was just something that I wanted to tailor to help other people. So I decided to make this a guide, 7 steps, that being 7 steps where it's an easy read. The process in this was, the lesson was definitely just being authentic, getting it out. I learned a lot of tricks to the trade as far as how to quickly get your content out. If you don't want to like put pen to a paper, or if you don't want to type it, if you want to speak it, some of us are way more expressive in our words as we speak, as opposed to how we write. And then some of us are overthinkers. So I learned, just get it out. It doesn't have to be perfected. Leave that to the editors, or leave that to the second draft or third draft. And I was able to finish my manuscript within 2 days. So I actually have awards for it. So it was quite a journey. I really had to tap into myself. It was really difficult because a lot of the time I had to kind of dig deep and go back to those really painful moments of what that was like, you know, leading up to me being the last person with him when he was alive and he was breathing. I actually wrote a poem called Last Breath, representing that time, to his homegoing service that I'm planning with my brother and my family, to the day after, where I'm with his mother, my grandmother, who's 91 years old, cleaning out, you know, where he used to rest his head every day. So the lesson was being true to yourself, making sure that you dig deep, because your story's not for you, it's for someone else. And I knew that this is the part of where we are in the world right now, that it wasn't really about me. It wasn't about me being scared or fearful. It wasn't about me, you know, oh my gosh, airing my dirty laundry. But there was somebody out there whose life depended on hearing this guide and these 7 steps on how to navigate what they've never had to navigate before.
Wow. And, you know, I think about what's happening in the world at the moment, and you know, there's so many things, and I don't want you to reveal too much in the book because, you know, we need to read it. You know, people need to read it and get to the real story, because you will never be able to impart it in just a few minutes. But the one thing I do want to bring up, which I think is relevant right now, is the concept of shock. Because right now with the pandemic, you expect, and I think shock applies to all deaths, but especially during a pandemic, something happens that you're not ready for. It's one thing to have some form of notice, but how do you handle the shock aspect, and what advice do you give to people to just deal with this initial, oh my gosh, I have to deal with something I did not want to deal with?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's shock is what we all were experiencing. And I tell you, I'm no different. You know, from the beginning of the pandemic, I dealt with a lot of anxiety. You know, I was just going. I was manic. I didn't want to sit still. And I constantly had to be busy and occupy my time and my mind, to the point where I was absolutely exhausted. So I think it's really important that you confront where you are. As I mentioned, journaling is cathartic for me. So I go there to kind of take inventory of myself. Like, okay, what are you feeling today? Where are you? From a scale of 1 to 10, right? You go to the doctor, they're like, what's your pain, right? I literally will rate, you know, what am I feeling? You know, how am I anxious, or whatever emotions that I'm experiencing, I'm going to rate that. So I think it's important to acknowledge where you are. That's definitely a chapter in the book, acknowledging your pain and confronting it, because there's no way, you know, they say there's no way around pain. You can't go above it or under it or around it. You need to go through it to get to the other side. And there's no way to avoid it, because at some point it does resurface. So I advise people, check in with yourself, take inventory, acknowledge your pain, confront it, and then find help, find assistance. And that's okay too. Another chapter in the book, you know, where you definitely need to tap into your resources. You know, for me, it was therapy, it was a counselor, a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, a lot of, you know, talking to friends that have been through what I've been through. And sadly enough, you know, I'm relatively young at 38. And a lot of my girlfriends that I grew up with, that I've known for 20, 30 years, have lost a parent or both. And that's alarming in itself. So, you know, after you get past that shock and you just allow yourself to feel the pain and devastation, you can then, I also write out a vision. What is it that I want to do next? What is it that my dad wanted to do that he didn't even have the chance to do, right? What is my responsibility as his offspring, myself and my brother, to continue his legacy? My dad loved jazz. He was a poet. He was phenomenal. He was a carpenter. He was great with his hands. So we're very creative beings, myself and my brother. So we have a responsibility to carry that on. So remember why you're here. Remember your purpose. Tie the person that you love, that you lost, tie that to your purpose and what they might have wanted to do, and allow that to propel you to live.
Beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. And Vernae, tell us about how you assist and work with people who are experiencing grief right now.
Yes. So honestly, it's one of those things that I didn't want to do. I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I to do with this? Like, I wrote this book because I just wanted to check off my little bucket list for my birthday weekend. Like, oh, I'm going to publish a book, right? I didn't know that it was going to be needed. It was going to be in such high demand. So I find that a lot of times people are walking around with this feeling of loss and pain and grief, and it's heavy. And they don't even realize, right? Because again, if you don't acknowledge it, it's weighing you down at some point. And it's not until it just hits you with tongue bricks that, you know, something's going on, something that I didn't deal with before. So I am really helping people to find their voice, move from that place of loss and grief, step into their confidence, step into who it is that they want to be, step into that vision that maybe they wrote down about themselves, that vision or whatever dreams that they had prior to that loss, and dare to live on purpose. So that's through mentorship. It's through helping them to find their purpose and find their voice. I have a client who, you know, she wants to be a speaker. She has a phenomenal testimony that people need to hear. And she wants to draw, you know, sometimes you see people and you just gravitate towards them. And like you say, the light or the confidence. And I attribute that to God, and I attribute that to the amazing women that have raised me because they are some powerful forces. So with that, I allow them to lean on me, to tell me, to maybe sometimes express what they can't express through words, like on a paper. They can tell me, and then we can help cultivate and really nurture a lot of their gifts so that they can let their light shine, so that they can go out there and tell their story and find their own voice.
Amazing. Thank you for the amazing work that you're doing, Vernae. It really is special, and it's important at a time like this. And more importantly now is people who want to get hold of you and get hold of your book, where can they go?
Yes. So Letters to My Father, it's easy enough. You can go to www.letters2myfather.com. It's just like a nice little landing page. You will see my picture. You will be able to read a little bit about me, a lot of my background that's not related to authorship, which might be interesting because, you know, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, who is this person? Where did they come from? You can also go to my website, vernaetaylor.com. And of course, if you're looking to gain some more interest and more support in mentorship and accountability and finding your voice, My Life Lived on Purpose. But I'm Vernae Taylor across all boards, all platforms. So surely you can find me on a Linktree as long as you connect with me online through social media, anywhere. You can click on another link and it will get you to your next point. So vernaetaylor.com, Letters to My Father, that's the number 2, myfather.com, and get this copy anywhere in the world. I can get you an autographed copy with some goodies and bonuses.
Absolutely beautiful. Vernae Taylor, thank you so much for joining me today on scottcundill.com.
Thank you.